You know, the Prime Minister's got big pressure tonight. The Stop the Votes policy. It's the third reading tonight. If it's defeated, no Stop the Votes policy, and we now know that more boats are crossing the Channel as we speak. Mark White, our Home Security Editor here. What's going on the Channel right now?
Yeah, the very visible manifestation of this crisis that's engulfing the government. We can reveal that 4 small boats have crossed the English Channel this morning. A 5th boat is trying to make the crossing as we speak in pretty horrendous weather conditions. It's deteriorating out in the Channel, 14-knot winds. It doesn't sound a lot, but actually it's blowing from the north. It pushes against the prevailing current, the tide that goes through the Channel, and churns up these waves. And when you're on a flimsy boat like that, it just makes it very difficult to cross. So 3 of those small boats made it across in the early hours. A 4th boat was intercepted by Border Force about 8 this morning. I say intercepted.
Brought here.
And they're taken on board.
Nice, comfortable ride for them.
And this 5th boat is struggling, attempting to reach the line to UK waters. When it does, it's guaranteed, of course, that the people on board will be picked up and taken to Dover Harbour for processing. Now, GB News provisional figures suggest that about 150 may have come ashore so far today. That is a little less than normally on 4 small boats, but that's because the weather conditions are so bad, they reduce the numbers on the boats to make sure they get across. Because normally they'd be stuffing 60 to 70 people on these boats. So they put them down to about 25, 30
Still too
when
many.
The weather's bad.
So it's just 10 o'clock in the morning here and 150 people have arrived by boat so far today. Just to let that hang in the air for a minute.
And this is in ice-cold weather. The sea is ice cold.
Well, so this is interesting. I've been speaking to a maritime security source this morning who said that the decision by these criminal gangs to push the boats out is crazily stupid. He said the criminal gangs have a callous disregard for the safety of those they push ashore in these flimsy boats. He said it's crazily stupid, as I just said. These winds make conditions very dangerous, and with sub-zero temperatures, anyone who does end up in the water only has minutes to live.
I don't know whether you heard, Mark, to our debate we had, a very fiery debate. If you missed it, do go back and watch it on YouTube with Richard Tice and our other Richard, MP for Gloucestershire. Richard Graham, thank you. Richard Tice is still very clear and maintains that you can pick up these boats and take them back to the French shoreline. Richard Graham says that's just not legally correct. Who is right?
Well, there are the legal niceties here, and I don't know the actual legality of it. But one thing's for sure, if the British government decided to pick, and I know you clearly feel it's a good idea, but if the British government picked up the migrants and returned them and dropped them back off in a French port, there would be an almighty fallout with the French government and with the EU. I just don't think, well, I know Rishi Sunak is not willing to do that.
Because he won't upset people on our behalf.
Well, indeed. So the best plan is deterrence. That's the Rwanda policy, which is in all kinds of trouble. And really, if it goes ahead anyway, is it going to be much of a deterrent? I heard you mentioning before to them about those on the other side of the Channel.
Who you've spoken to.
Absolute joke.
And I said that. I often quote you on that, Mark.
It's been rumbling on for 2 years. And if they do send people to Rwanda, it's not going to be many, many thousands. It might be a couple of thousand at best.
Let's talk to Arlene Foster, former leader of the DUP and former First Minister. In the revolt last night, Arlene, some of your DUP colleagues voted with the Tory rebels.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very specific issue around Northern Ireland because, of course, if immigrants come into Dublin, if they come into the Republic of Ireland, they can then come up through Northern Ireland and into the rest of the UK. So I think they're very concerned about that because the Rwanda policy, they are saying, is at risk because of Article 2 of the Protocol. Article 2 of the Protocol said that there will be no diminution in rights for those people living in Northern Ireland. Some nationalists, many nationalists, see that as a safeguard to protect ECHR in Northern Ireland. Now, there was an immigration case, well, it wasn't a specific immigration case, but it was around this area called D'Souza about British nationality. And the court sided with the government on that occasion. Government will say Article 2 doesn't apply to immigration. The DUP is very concerned that it will, and so they've put down an amendment today. I don't think it'll be taken probably by the Speaker, but it's essentially saying we need to have this clarified. We cannot have immigrants coming in through the back door and indeed using Northern Ireland in that respect.
So the migrants are coming onto the Dublin coast, then going through Dublin, going through Ireland, across the border.
Many of them
into
are
Northern
staying
Ireland.
in the Republic of Ireland, and we know there's been difficulties
in
in
a lot
relation
of unrest
to that. But I think the concern is that they will come through Northern Ireland and into Great Britain.
And then can they then legally come from Northern Ireland into Britain?
They can, because we have a common travel area between the UK, Ireland, the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man. So that's a common travel area where you can move without having to show a passport. So they could easily come to Belfast, get on it. They don't have to show any ID
and do many of them
come here.
Do many of them choose to stay in Northern Ireland?
Well, we don't have a huge immigration issue at the moment. I think the concern is if the Rwanda Act or Rwanda bill goes through as it currently is, then will that cause a difficulty for us in Northern Ireland because people will come in through Dublin and then up to Northern Ireland and get all the benefits of being British.
Would you want to limit the right to appeal?
We've discussed this in the past, and we've said that we can't make the perfect the enemy of the good. And I think what you'll see today is that a lot of those people who wanted the Bill Cash amendment will probably back the bill today because they want some sort of way of stopping.
Imperfect is better than
nothing. But I have to say it would have been better if it had been tightened up. There's no doubt about that. And it's a shame that it hasn't been.
I suppose it might still be today, but it doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it. I think the moment was last night.
And if you get your crystal ball out, what's going to happen now, Arlene? What's going to happen this afternoon? What will happen tomorrow? What will the implications be for Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister?
Well, I think he will win this afternoon in my crystal ball. I think there'll be a number of MPs that will vote against him, some quite big names. Suella Braverman will vote against him.
Robert Jenrick, maybe?
Yes, exactly. It will pass, and then it will go to the Lords, and we all know what will happen there.
Will it be torn apart?
It will be torn apart, but at the end of the day, the government is the government, and they will get it through if they so desire.
How long do you think that will take? What time scale are we looking at? If it sticks around in the House of Lords, and
they could talk it out for a couple of months, I would say.
Well, it's full of judges and lawyers who will probably run rings round the Tory government front bench. I'm not being disrespectful to the front bench, but there's some very high-powered lawyers in that house.
There are very high-powered lawyers. There's a lot of people who will look to amnesty for briefing, and you can imagine what will happen in that respect. I mean, we need a policy to deal with small boats. Mark has very clearly told us what's happening today on a very, very cold January day. What's going to happen February, March, April, coming into the summer. And all the while, it's a key policy of Rishi Sunak. And I know it's not a great day for Rishi with inflation going up as well, but he needs to get this policy through today. I think he will get it through the Commons today. It'll be a case where a lot of people some of his big names will vote against him, but I think, and we've seen Robert Graham saying, you need to get this.
I still think there's an issue for him about going late for a general election, because if 150 have arrived today, Mark tells us, in ice-cold weather, the wind rising, what's it going to be like in April and May when the weather is calm? Yeah. The sea is become. They're becoming in their thousands. Yeah. Can you risk that, going all the way through the summer and then going to the country saying, I didn't quite stop the boats?
Well, which is better, having a general election in May when all the boats are still coming and perhaps his legislation hasn't gone through, or waiting until he's actually back in November time again, when we're back in the winter time, the legislation may have gone through, he might have had a few flights away. So I think that's what he's taken a gamble on all of that.
I also think, just in terms of how you vote, I do still think the vast majority of people, even though they feel strongly about the boats, they feel strongly about how much taxpayers' money we're paying to house people. We feel strongly about the fact that it feels like it's very unfair that people can arrive here and get a dental appointment when we can't get a dental appointment. I still think people will vote for, do they have enough money in their bank account at the end of the month? So the economy, I think, is probably first and foremost, is more important to people than the immigration issue.
The two are linked, of course.
The two are linked, but if Rishi Sunak can improve the economic situation of people by November, then that has got to be what he pins his... And
the 5 pledges are a mixture of issues, aren't they? But inflation was one of those issues, and it has gone back up today. And I think the trend will probably continue to go down. But he would not have welcomed that when he heard that this morning.
What's your take on the battle the school is having, the Michaela school, over the head teacher saying they cannot have a space for Muslim worship because she wants to treat everybody the same. What do you think about Philip?
Well, I strongly support her in that. I think that school should be a place for everybody, and people should. And if it's not a specific religious school, it's not a Catholic school, it's not a Church of England school, it's a secular school. If children want to pray, then they make a space for themselves and they do that. And it should be something that is facilitated at home. I mean, religion is something that parents should really take the lead on if you're at a secular school. And you don't want to cause division, and I think it would cause division in that school.
It is.
And I really support her.
If there was a Jewish child in that school, what about my synagogue, miss?
Yeah.
What about the Catholic kid who wants to church? You can't have one for one and not for the others.
Yes, it's very, very difficult, particularly in London when there are so many different faiths there.
And she's almost in hiding now, Catherine Birbalsingh, because of the aggression and the death threats that she's getting. And the implications of this case are so enormous in terms of what we allow, the language around this is very difficult, isn't it? But what a head of a school who wishes to run it in her way and keep it... It's not even as though she's saying you can't have religion. She's happy for children of all denominations to be there and mingle together, but she clearly wants them to mix rather than be divided. And how can she be punished for that, Arlene?
Yeah. And she is one of those educationalists who actually did put her head above the parapet and say, here's how I think schools should be run. And, as you rightly say, hugely successful. That's why children and their parents want their children to go to that school. And now what happens? The parents and the children are trying to change the school and trying to change the ethos of the school. So I think it's a real challenge to her, and I send her all of my solidarity today as she faces all of this.
As do we. Right.